This is the Denison Barb, a beautiful community fish perfect for aquarium hobbyists of any experience level. Today we're going to talk through the care requirements so that you can keep this fish successfully yourself. But there's also a dark side to keeping this fish, something you need to know before you go buy one. And we're going to talk through that as well. The Denison Barb is an immensely popular community fish. It goes by several other common names as well, such as roseline shark, redline torpedo shark, and similar names. Its proper scientific name is Sahyadria denisonii. Now, I'm usually a big fan of using scientific names, but in this case, I'm okay with common names because there aren't any other species called the Denison Barb, so there's not really much risk for confusion. And this fish is popular for good reason. It's a very attractive aquarium fish, with that cool black bar across the body, with the red half bar above it, and the characteristic yellow spots on the tail. It's highly active in your tank, and it's very peaceful. This fish was first introduced to the American hobby in the late 90s, and it exploded in popularity. And we're going to come back to that point later. But let's right now talk about the care requirements if you're interested in keeping this fish. The first thing you need to know is they do need a decent sized aquarium, and that's because these fish get to be a decent size themselves, 5 to 6 inches. And beyond that, they're highly active and fast. They like to school, or shoal might be a better term, but they like to hang out in groups and just kind of cruise the tank back and forth and back and forth. So they really do need a nice sized and long aquarium to accommodate this behavior. I highly recommend a 125-gallon aquarium or just a 6-foot tank. Now, there are many people who will say a 75-gallon aquarium is sufficient size. But personally, I prefer keeping them in at least 6-foot tanks to make sure they're happy and healthy. Another characteristic of this species that calls for bigger aquaria is the fact that they prefer to be kept in groups. This is a shoaling fish, meaning they are most comfortable when they are in larger groups of their own species. At a minimum, I recommend keeping 6 of these fish. But in an ideal situation, it would be 10 or more. In a group that size, they appear to be much more comfortable in the aquarium, more outgoing, less skittish, and it just seems as though they thrive a bit more. Let's talk about water temperature, because something pretty interesting about this species is they are a cool water fish. They come from subtropical environments, specifically India. These fish are found in the cool, fast-flowing waters of rivers and streams that run down from the mountains along the western coast of India, also known as the Western Ghats or the Sahyadri Mountains. So they can handle water that's much cooler than your typical aquarium. They can range from anywhere down to 60 degrees Fahrenheit up to the high 70s. Now, most aquariums are going to be in the mid to high 70s range. So they do fine in that area, but that is actually at the top end of their preference. I myself keep them around the 77 or 78 degree mark simply because I keep them with other fish that prefer warmer water. But if you kept them in a tank with other cool water species or even on their own, you wouldn't need a heater. As long as you keep them in a house that is moderately comfortable to you, they'll do just fine. Now, for feeding, there is something you have to keep in mind here. While these fish are undemanding in terms of the kind of food they like, it is important to keep in mind the size of food. These fish have pretty small mouths, especially relative to their longer body size. They can't handle large pellets, so the best foods for them are going to be flake foods. When they're adults, you can give them things like vibrobites that are much thinner, but think of these like rainbow fish. Rainbow fish also have very small mouths, and if you give them food that's too big, they could actually get in trouble with trying to eat those bigger foods. You need to give them something that they can actually swallow. And that pretty much covers everything you need to know to successfully keep this fish in your own home aquarium. But let's switch gears a bit. Let's talk about, earlier I said there was a dark side to this fish. Let's talk about that now. So, as I said, these fish exploded in popularity in the late 90s, at least in the United States. Now, with that came an over collection of the species. See, these fish are hard to breed in captivity. I don't actually know of any hobbyists that have done it. And with that, and with the popularity, people needed to go to the wild to get their specimens. That caused big problems. Wild populations of this fish have declined dramatically. One local study found that from 2006 to 2010, populations dropped by over 70%. This fish is now listed by the IUCN as endangered, and the primary driver cited is collection for the aquarium hobby. Now, there are other factors at play, such as habitat loss from agricultural development as well as pollution of their natural environments. But the main thing is that we just like these fish in our homes, and they are suffering for that. And the situation is almost certainly worse today. We simply don't know how many wild populations are left. But there are glimmers of hope. If there weren't, why would I actually be keeping this fish in my own tank? For one thing, awareness of the plight of this species has grown dramatically. People are actually talking about this. For a long time, local governments in India were promoting this fish as a viable commercial export for local economies. Now, there are protections in place, such as specifically defined periods that you can collect these fish from the wild, and one local government has banned their collection entirely. But the brightest ray of hope came in the late 2000s and early 2010s, when captive bred breeding programs at zoos and aquariums and even commercial fish farms began to see success. Nowadays, these fish can be bred in captivity, though some of that is a trade secret, and I don't think many hobbyists are going to be able to do it themselves. But if you go to a fish store, most likely the Denison Barbs you'll see are captive bred. But you have to be very careful. The lesson here is do not buy wild caught Denison Barbs. I am not against the idea of wild caught fish in general, but with this species, it is a big no-no. Do not support the sale of any wild caught Denison Barbs. And before buying any from your fish store, ask them if they know the origin of the fish they're selling. Be informed and educated on what you're keeping in your tanks. But hey guys, that's all I had for you today. I hope you enjoyed learning about the Denison Barb, how to keep them, and what you need to look out for before buying any for yourself. I appreciate you stopping by the fish room. I look forward to seeing you next time.